Thank you all so much for joining us at Gray Eye. We had some fun, obviously naming this. Josh, thanks for bringing the beard gray. Where I am now more prominent gray. And I wanted to kind of share a quick story of how this all started before I jump into intros. That about 15 years ago, I wrote a blog about how my dad downloaded the cloud when I could barely explain to him what the cloud was. And when he came into my office and said, I downloaded that cloud thingy you were telling me about, I went to his laptop and he had downloaded Amazon Cloud Player. And it struck me as I have been on this amazing journey of technology evolution that we're now in a moment of a new experience of downloading the cloud. And so wanted to gather some of my favorite colleagues of the past customers, past partners, friends, and we wanted to start this session first with just some introductions and stories. So let's go ahead and kick off with quick panelist intros. First, I'm going to start with Josh Minton, just a little quick intro where you are and what your interest in AI is.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Thanks, everyone, for your time today. So I'm an author and enterprise productivity expert. I work out of Columbus, Ohio. I specialize in CRM and building conversational operations channels for big banks and insurance companies. I also coach executives on how to become better ethical leaders as they navigate this modern AI era. So looks like it's working now.
Yes, thank you. All right, let's go to Tom.
Hi, Tom Bellata. I am a business strategist and AI strategist. I've actually been working with AI since 2013 when I launched an IoT practice. And then in 2016, we started implementing wave one of predictive AI. But really, what I do today is help companies apply AI to their business strategy. AI is not a strategy, but to help companies with their business strategy and how they can take advantage of AI to supercharge their business.
Thanks, Tom. Tonya?
Hi, I'm Tonya. I'm also a certified AI consultant, and I also help businesses in the community learn how to integrate AI into their business, into their everyday life, and just making sure that we are able to penetrate at all the different levels in the community.
Excellent. Thanks so much for being here. Tim?
So I'm the CEO of By the People Technologies. We are AI strategists. We help people find out where they should build AI into their systems and products to be able to become more competitive.
Thanks so much for being here, Tim. And Irvin?
Hi, my name is Irvin Rogers. I am the former state of Ohio State CIO and the former CIO for Designer Brands, aka DSW. And just recently started a company called Visionary Resource Group, focused in on executive coaching. It's funny we mentioned AI. I actually led the AI discussion. I'm the first to join my board at National Church Residence with an IT background, and so I'm bringing along folks with regards to leaning into technology. People might be asking themselves, what does this matter with seniors? Well, hey, if we can have bots that are tuned to them. Most older folks are lonely, so if we could solve that, make them happier, they'll be a healthy patient. So I'm just happy to be here and grateful for my friend Kate for asking me to be a part.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So it looks like Olivia wasn't able to make it today. One thing I wanted to share is we have a couple of other attendees here that I think will want to listen in for today and then share some expertise. So this is a great group. What I wanted to also introduce Christy Nupp, Alexis Yamakowski, and Jason Haller from the Five to Flow team. And what we'll be doing today is asking some thought provoking questions and hopefully creating a conversation that will have a lot of different perspectives and views based on the various experiences of the team. But why we wanted to have this session more than anything is to think about the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, if you will, the FUD, and as well as the excitement and potential with AI as we grow together. One thing I do want to share with Five to Flow's philosophy and sticking to our core values, mission, and vision is how do we promote flow for peak performance in the workplace and leverage the five core elements in that. So, Tom, I think you mentioned not having an AI strategy, but having a business strategy where you leverage AI as a tool. So, I think I'll start with you on our first question that I'd love to get everybody going on is the first piece of technology that changed the way you worked. So, I'm going to just raise my hand quickly to share. And as we have this called Gen X and Gray Eye, and a couple baby boomers likely to join and watch, is we went through school without cell phones or the internet. And so I'm curious, Tom, let's have you kick it off. Tell us about the first piece of technology that changed the way you work.
Sure. I know. I was into computers my whole life when I was a kid from fifth grade, except when I got to college, I never went to the library and I did everything on my typewriter. But when I got out of school, I worked for AT&T. So around 92 and 93, I worked for a systems planning and architecture team. We were connected to Bell Labs, and Bell Labs was always doing revolutionary stuff. We found a way to find IP proxies, and they changed every hour. So we were able to change the IP address and get to the internet. And in 92, 93, I think in 92, there was maybe 10 to 20 websites total. We were using Gopher tools and FTP and things like that. So through that, then Netscape came out in 94. So I had access to the internet early on, and we were doing some really cool stuff and starting to build HTML 1.0 websites. Fast forward 10 years, when I was at Acumen, I had the privilege of leading our first cloud computing project. So we implemented Salesforce for one of our largest customers. Unfortunately, Kate, we did beat Blue Wolf out for that work back in 2004. And that was our first project, and that got us into cloud computing. We were even doing mobile apps in 2004. So I think really the internet and then cloud computing and mobility were two things that really kind of opened my eyes to technology over the last couple
I
decades.
love that. And I want to throw that to Tim then because Tim we originally met through Salesforce. So I was sharing with Tim that I was implementing Salesforce for Huntington Bank before it was called Classic. So Tim, what's your technology story, your best memory?
I thought you were picking on me because I'm the oldest one here.
I
I
don't know. I
taught
didn't take a birth date. So
I taught Lotus 1, 2, 3 classes. Just want to tell you how long that goes.
okay.
There's a few people that are wringing their heads. Most people don't have a clue what I'm talking about.
We
So
were on
that
it
was
at
the
Huntington.
yeah, really? Okay, good. So you knew what was going on. So yeah, Lotus 1, 2, 3, and was years before that. Word Perfect. I guess I throw them all out. Compact computer. I used to walk around with that compact computer, which is why I'm such a big guy right now because I would carry the compact computer everywhere and do software at companies. It was amazing the stuff we were doing back in those days, but it was all fun. It was all good. It was all changing. It was all visionary. And visionary for me means you see something that people are not doing now, and you're surrounded by a bunch of doubters that will say, well, we're doing this work now. Why would we need that? Right. And that's what visionary basically is. That's what technology allows you to be, is be visionary.
I love that. And why we wanted to start with the nostalgic stories is when we had to adopt technologies back then. And then we were like, can't we just do it the old way? Like faxing and interoffice mail. So, Tonya, how about you? What's the first piece of tech that changed the way you work?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear everybody's backstory, but one of the things that I remember vividly is having a co-op. I was in college and I went to Johnson and Johnson for a co-op, and they had business objects, and I thought this was really cool, to utilize business objects to, look at the data in the network. And so fast forward, getting in working with Acumen at one of their largest implementations for Salesforce and having to ask salespeople to give up their penderfolds and cards holders to adopt this new tool. I think that's one of the times when I think, those inflection points as I started to really grab onto technology. And I think one story was, although I kind of grew up with the internet, I didn't jump onto Google as fast as I think I could have. And I remember
Yeah.
people always knowing the answer, and I was like, "Why? How did they do that?" Until I realized we were all Googling it. It was at the time I was still looking it up the long way. So yeah, that's my big inflection point.
I love that. I think it's an interesting one too. When I had a client we were implementing Salesforce for, and when I went to her office, she had all these manila folders blocking her beautiful view of the city. And I said, my goal for this project is that you get rid of all of those folders because they're blocking your view. So, Josh, I know we started working together on a Salesforce project for a client, but your technology love predates that. Tell us about your major shift.
All right, y'all better put your breakdancing pants on because we're going back to 1983 when my family acquired a Betamax VCR. And I'm a natural born storyteller. I've loved telling stories since I was a little boy. And that ability to capture those stories and watch them over and over and over again taught me how to tell stories. The second piece of this is the hardware and software, and that's 11 years old in 87 when my grandmother, who didn't have a pot to boil a potato in, spent money she didn't have to buy me a word processor that was portable. And that's when I learned how to start telling those stories, putting my ideas down and sharing them with people. So those are the two most important technology impacts on my early life.
Amazing. I think Jason just got the vision of the breakdancing pants. That's his jam. Irvin, how about you?
When Jason mentioned the word processor, you took me back to my first year in college, man. It was a Brothers word processing, and it was I had my own printer attached to it because I had to print cartridges, my own paper. I even had a little side business on the side where I charged other students so they didn't have to walk all the way to the center of campus to use the library. But that's a different topic for a different day. But thank you for that. I'm living back in 19 such and such. At any rate, my fond memory from a technology perspective, which really got me started, was my internship. And I'm really going to date myself when I mention this technology, but mainframe. And so it was a mainframe terminal emulator company called Core Technology. And I started there, didn't know much about computers, take college courses and all that good stuff, the word processor. But my job in the first 3 days was to put together a computer. And the way I did that and I didn't know it was a test at the time, but they sat me with the sales team. Well, you sit someone that's an extrovert with the sales team. And so at the end of the day, I helped them and they helped me. I helped them with their renewals. And so they're like, what are you gonna do for us? I said, well, I can make these phone calls. And so by the end of lunch, I had raised about $300,000 and help them to look at renewals entirely different. Because it's just me calling folks, saying,
Wow.
"Hey, would you like to keep your license active?" And just explain the benefits. And well, of course we do. Let me give you a PO. And so I took that back to them, and they were like shocked and all, like, "How did you do that?" It was a different outside perspective of what they had been doing day to day. In exchange, they gave me a motherboard, and I said, "Wait a minute. Now I don't know much about computers, but that's one of the main pieces that you need to make this bad boy go." It was a 286 at the time. So that I fell in love. They set me with developers the next day, et cetera. And then that's when I realized that this gift of being able to connect with people, build relationships was actually a gift. And I just needed to fine tune it. And by the end of that 3 days, I was able to stay. And then I started going to college auctions and buying all these computers, et cetera. And sadly, and unfortunately, about 2 years ago, my wife made me finally give up my 80 two, 286, 386, 486. I had about 10 towers, and I just wanted to hold on to them because they were mine and I built them. So thanks.
Amazing. I love that. I want to open it up to the group if all the panelists have gone just for any kind of quick nostalgic stories. And I think you can probably catch on to the reason for that is we're in another storytelling evolution era. So any thoughts from attendees that you want to chime in on before I ask the next question?
Two that come to mind, Kate. So I remember in third grade was the first time I ever sat behind a computer to play Oregon Trail on an old Macintosh with a floppy disk about that big. And I think I died within about 4 seconds. I like starved to death on the trail early on. And then fast forward into the early 90s, I had my first girlfriend who had a pager, and I had a special code to page her when I wanted to get a hold of her. It was 600, I still remember.
Love that. Great memories. Anyone else?
I was just going to talk about the mass adoption of cell phones and smartphones specifically, which totally changed the dynamics of when you were going to be available, the expectations of when you needed to be on, and switched it to always needing to be on. And that was a huge shift that, especially looking back on, everybody can realize that, now if someone sends you an email, there's the expectation that you might need to read it at any time of day, weekday or weekend, or they can message you, call you. Whereas before, your phone was at your desk, and if you weren't there, you didn't have to answer it, and they could leave a message and you'd get to it when you had time. So that was just a huge shift that I've observed looking back, doing some of the research that I've done.
Love it. Christy.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I remember working for a transportation company in the early 90s when we went from Wang to networked PCs. And I was third shift. We were a pretty young crew. And I remember thinking in my early 20s, like, what's the big deal? This should be easy. And the president of the company came in and sat at my desk and talked through the transition and asked a lot of questions. And I remember being almost flippant about it. And then roughly 3 years ago, I came to my firstborn nephew very timidly asking, like, what's this chat GPT? What do you do? Can you help me? And so to see this come full circle where I felt I was a renegade in the 20s and could do anything. And now with a full head of gray hair, very, very nervous about approaching. And fortunately, he was able to give it to me in very of the most simplest terms to be able to get me to embrace it. And it's, I know he's laughing at me now being in this discussion.
I love it.
So
Well,
I have a
go
funny
ahead.
story. It's not involving me, but it involves my dad. He was one of the first oral surgeons in Athens, Georgia. He started there in the 60s. And so when the hospital systems changed over from paper or recorded notes to notes in the computer, my dad kept crashing the computers. And so they had to hire somebody. There was someone they hired just to keep him from touching any of the computers and to transcribe all of his notes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because they were like, don't touch the computer. Every time Dr. Fennell touches it, it crashes. He was not allowed to touch it. So it's kind of the reverse of technology, but yeah.
It reminded me of a story of, I can't remember if this is lore or actually happened at Huntington where I used to work, where an assistant kept being given a floppy disk. Mike, you brought up the floppy disk with the hole in the middle, and you couldn't touch that or it would corrupt all the data. And she was meant to send it to another department, and they asked her to put a label on it. And the department received it. All the data was corrupt. And very long story short, on the third iteration of trying to get it to them, the boss walks into the assistant's office and says, "Why they keep getting a corrupt thing? Can you show me how you're putting the label on this?" And she puts the floppy disk into the typewriter and scrolls it through and starts typing right on the table, and had corrupted the disk. So we've got an interesting evolution. And so when you think about the relatability for all of us going through these different journeys with video games, with transcriptions, with notes, we have several note takers and transcriptions on this call, and we're all together in this journey. I now want to talk a little bit about AI as another evolution. It's the same but different. Some of the folks I've been talking to about this feel it's the same, but it's different. So I'm going to open this up first. I think maybe let's start with Josh. How do we as Gen X leaders keep up with AI without feel like we're constantly playing catch up?
That's the question, ain't it? So about a year ago, I was at a speech in Cincinnati, and I asked all the professionals, there's a wide spectrum of people in the room. I said, how many people have been in business for 10 years? And almost everybody raised their hands. I went 20, 30, I even did 40, and someone still had their hands up at 40 years. And I said, let's just take a moment and appreciate how much technology these people in the 20, 30, and 40-year group have lived through. When I graduated high school in 1993, My information access system was Dewey Decimal. I knew how to walk into any library in the world and find the information I was looking for. I couldn't do that today. I can't remember how that stuff worked, honestly. But we live through the internet. We live through mobile phones. We live through social media. We live through the networking of data behind firewalls and companies. We figured out how to automate things that would seem like magic to people 100 years ago. And now we're putting our thoughts into machines and having them read back to us in more intelligent, better, more integrated ways than we could ever possibly imagine. No generation in history has lived through that kind of technological change. And so I like to say I know a lot of, I don't know a lot of victims in Generation X, but I know a whole lot of survivors.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. That's 40 years. It's like when you have everyone in the room stand up and then slowly sit down and sit down. Tim, how about you? Same question.
I think we realize that we're always going to be constantly playing catch up. That's just the way it is. I've been in technology since for a long time. I keep on saying I have 20 years experience in technology, but I've been saying that for so many years just to try to hide a little bit of the blonde highlights that I have in my hair. But the reality is, and everybody admits this, right? Whether you're Sam Altman, everybody at the top is admitting the same thing. This is moving so much faster than anyone thought it was going to move. So when I try to tell people, one thing you need to realize is it will surprise you what's going to happen in 3 months. Forget about trying to think what's going to happen in 3 or 5 years. I still think, the opinions are way out on that. But what's going to surprise you is what's going to happen in 3 months. And what's going to surprise you even more is what's going to happen in 6 months. So as long as we keep our time frames in a certain block order, is this technology, and of course we always have to ask ourselves, at least those of us at consulting companies, is this technology I can use now? Or is this technology I should learn to use now because I'll be able to use it later? Or is it technology I should know about and just keep my ears on it so that when it becomes something later on, I'll be able to do that? That's the way I tell people, because otherwise you'll just die, right, in every aspect of the way. A new large language model comes out. And the headlines are not, well, this large language model does slightly better than the others in the benchmarks. No, what are the headlines? The headlines say Google is dead. OpenAI is closed after the last one that just got put out by Anthropic. And no one talks anymore in this sense of, let me just give you some information. It's all sensationalism because they're hoping that you spend a little bit of time on their LinkedIn account or on whatever they're trying to publish to get forward with it. No one's really telling you just some easy things to get to know what happened right now. Everybody is there's an atomic bomb that just went off. And everybody just needs to breathe a little bit, smell a little bit, enjoy the roses, go back and get back in the sunshine. It's a beautiful day out here in New York. And just say, what's going to happen in 3 months? What do I think is going to happen in 6 months? And that's what I'm going to be in tune with. And everything else I need to know something about.
I love that. I think the evolution you talked about and testing things out is a good story from Tom Bellata, which you don't have to tell about Bartendro. But one of my favorite iterations for Tom was to show technology being something creative. And so, Tom, I'm curious, as you think about your journey with using these tools on the evolution, your thoughts on that question. And you're welcome to tell the Bartendro story.
Well, yeah, Bartender was pretty cool. I was mentioning that we've been doing AI since 2013. So we integrated an automated bartender to Salesforce with all sorts of intelligence. You told it what kind of mixers and alcohol it had. It automatically could generate the recipes from a mobile app. You could order your drinks and you could change the mix of the drinks. It would pull all the ingredients out. It would tell us when the bottles were empty, when you reload it. It tracked how many drinks you had, all the different types of ingredients you used. It was really cool, and it was fun to have at a conference at Dreamforce. So, it was just trying to show, and it had all that intelligence built in, and had predictive AI in it as well as machine learning. But in terms of how do we keep up with Gen X? I was talking to my kids the other day. I was a little surprised. I was asking them, how much are you using AI? They're both in college. And it's like, yeah, we're learning it. And I said, well, you got to use it in your personal life. Like, use it to record your professor's lecture and do your summary and do this. For note taking, there's so many ways. Use it for your research. They were using it, but they weren't really taking advantage of it. How do you do it? We have to use it in our daily personal and professional lives. Stay abreast of the developments. But I think, you really have to understand what's working and what's hype. There's a lot of hype out there right now in terms of what, AI is and what it can do and what it can't do. Another thing I'm going to say is everybody's going to be behind. The experts in AI right now and what they know and how things work. Oh, it's a RAG architecture and this is so important. In 3 years, if you don't keep up, they're not experts either, because everything is changing at a super rapid pace. So everybody has to keep up. What you know now is not what you're going to know in a few years about AI. I mean, there's fundamentals of machine learning. There's fundamentals of AI that are never going to change, and they've always been there since the advent of AI in the 1960s. So I know I can integrate it better into my daily life. I'm looking to do more and more. I just went to Belize. I planned my whole trip with AI. I use it for my research. I use it to work, what to do, what activities to do, and what have you. I use it more and more in everything that I do. And I think that's how we stay. The bottom line is, though, when we have our own personal co-pilots and it's driving our life, it's inevitable. We're all going to be caught up, and we're always going to be caught up. That's the way
I love it. Tonya, I see you head nodding, and I'm curious how you want to chime in on that.
Yeah, one of the philosophies I live by is the change is constant. And, this is another change. And you have to, I think when I speak to the community and I speak to people, my friends, I'm like, similar to Tom, you need to use it where you are, right? You need to adopt it where you are today. Whether if you're a teacher, adopt it in your teaching, in the work, see what's going on there. But don't get overwhelmed and don't say, "Oh no, I'm not doing this right now," because that's not an option because it's really here in everything that we do. And so I think I'm asking folks to embrace it, but don't get overwhelmed by it.
Mm.
If you start slow, there's no reason for you to go out and try to use every single tool you hear about. Stop scrolling, and thinking, oh, I could use this for this. If you don't need it today, don't go playing with it. But as are looking for something, doing research, I needed to find a place today that was quiet, that I can take this call. I went into Perplexity and I said, this is my location. Where is the closest library? And so you start using it in those small ways, and eventually it becomes, I don't think there's a day that I don't use AI for something.
Mm.
And that's just in the last couple, 2 years. So you definitely, you can do it. And I think you can do it with very smartly, but slowly, and keep paying attention. I think my favorite thing is to say, don't say this is too much or this is too fast. Pay attention. No one know what do they call them now? Social media, influencer was, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. Now that's a big deal. That's a whole, I mean, you can go to school for that now. So,
I was going to say, I
so,
hope we're on the trajectory to no longer know what influencers are, but
touche, but it is a thing. Um, and so we can definitely, I think we can definitely take our time with this, but pay attention.
Hmm. I love that. One of the things you brought up, and Jason might have a comment on this, with being intentional of going to use tools that you need to use. We talk about that with flow and like not even picking up your phone to look at it unless you know what you're going to be doing with it. Jason, any thoughts on that as you're experiencing AI and that intentionality?
Well, I guess based on your comment, my thought would be that there is certainly the danger to use AI the way that we've learned how to use all the other tech tools that we've come up with in the last 20 years, where we resort to it to alleviate boredom and then we kind of just waste our time on it. And we could really get sucked in because there's such novelty and immediate feedback that we could get from it at such a rapid pace and such a customizable way that it could really suck people in for potentially negative or unproductive ways to spend their time. Versus, there is the potential to do the exact opposite and use it in extremely profoundly productive ways. But it certainly has the capability to go either end of that spectrum.
Yeah, so Urban, I'm compelled to ask you specifically about working for public sector in that space and your evolution. What are your thoughts?
So to address the question directly and then go to public sector, the first thing is to help educate. Make sure that you're talking about the tools, help them to understand, et cetera. Because often, people can get sucked into using the free things. And so when I put on my CIO cap, I don't want you using the free stuff because it's not free. But if I can help educate you, I call it my 007 bag, jump out bag that I can help enable you to go and safely use these various technologies so that you can continue to learn and not be afraid of losing everything within your phone. But going back to the state, with regards to the state, when I took over state CIO, we were looking to evaluate whether we should go to the cloud. And I said, in order for us to change the direction, the trajectory, and get in front of this from a generational standpoint. I want to become cloud smart. And so I took the cloud from being cloud first, considering it, which meant they didn't do it. They just continued to build, legacy apps, et cetera, using servers and whatnot, to a cloud smart environment. And I remember the day that I pulled all four major vendors in, Salesforce being one of them, at AWS, Microsoft, and Oracle, all in the same room. And they were surprised that I did it quite that way. They wanted their own individual meeting. And I said, no, I want you to hear me the first time all together, so you're all on the same page and not taking away different pieces and parts. And really my challenge to them was along the lines of, I need you to help me to train this next generation on your product for free.
Mm.
And for free, it was like, jaw dropping, like, wait, how we're going to do this, why would I do that? And I said, give me a second, let me get you there. And ultimately what I want you to do is I want you to give me 100 vouchers, training vouchers. And then I want you to give me 100, certification vouchers. And here's why: because if I can train the next generation or the current generation on this tool set, and they start using it, they're going to spend more money with you. And this is a race to the end to see who's going to become, the top three, top one. And so they're like, "Oh man, I'm in." We immediately went back to the employees, and their employees, I had already met with them before, and basically they told me one of their biggest complaints was that each administration would say, yeah, we'll train you, and that's the first thing that gets cut. So now I've got free training that's guaranteed. Went back to them, gave them that, and said, not only am I going to participate, I'm going to take some of the trainings and take some of the certifications, and I'm going to kick off every single training event for at least the first 15 minutes. Now I didn't take any of the training or the tests. However, I was at every single one, and not only did we get 100% participation, we ended up getting about 50% of the folks certified. So then I went back to the vendors and said, all right, transparency time. I got everybody through. I used all 100% of the training vouchers, but I was only able to get 50%, through. But I need you to do it again. And they're like, done. We didn't think you're going to get any of that. So it's the give and take. And had I not done that, I would not have been able to get 55,000 people to work from home within a 4 weeks notice, getting it from Governor DeWine. We were one of the top leading states during that particular time. So
Mm.
again, it's just a matter of leaning into technology versus being afraid of it.
I love that, Urban, and I want to throw it back to the whole group panelist, attendee, five to flow. That's an interesting one that, and everybody who's worked with me in the past knows what Urban just said is the change management, training, strategic side of these implementations and evolutions with technology is the first to be cut. So as I open up the question around keeping up and learning and being on this journey, what are some of the challenges some of you are having with that at your organizations that we can talk about with the panel before I go to the next question?
The biggest challenge that I'm running into is both the cost to support, whether it's internal models, if we're talking about self-supported large language models, and the cost of supporting that, and then challenging the accuracy and validity and fidelity of those large language models. That if we're not, my opinion and perspective is that running a large language model on the data I have is going to create hallucinations because it's only on my data. If I don't understand what the gaps and opportunities for augmenting my data are, I can't prevent those hallucinations. And so presenting it as an investment opportunity to go out and purchase the data or leverage free data sets and whatnot to protect against any bias and prevent hallucinations so that we can respond to client needs with confidence.
That's a big one. I mean, in my experience with models, right? It's first of all, data is the key engine to everything, right? Your data for that, and then it's how do you leverage the data into the model, and over time to the cost thing, it's going to be like Moore's law. The costs are going to go down and down and down, and democratization of AI is going to continue to that cost isn't the biggest factor, but the other is because as models get bigger into reasoning, they're actually getting worse, right? Their accuracy is going down. But what can you do? distillation of the models, fine tuning of the models. You said adding data to the models, additional pre-training to the models, having those guardrails. There's going to be situations where humans always have to be in the loop, right? Or you have to have other say it's agentic, you have to have kind of agentic angels or other agents that provide additional oversight to make sure something doesn't go out the door without it be looked at as a human and looking at as another agent who's looking for anomalies that have to be looked at. And then it's a constant tuning process as well. So it is one of the biggest challenges there for sure right now that I'm hearing in the market.
And what I see in organizations, this is something we saw even when I was doing a lot of Salesforce implementations. We never really fine-tuned our data. We never really made sure our data was clean. How many projects did we lose scheduling on because that data was not optimized? And then these large language models are now coming in utilizing that data that's already out there, and we're expecting it to be flawless at giving us insights. And I really think that once again I do agree with the human in the loop, and these tools are collaborators. They're not, I don't believe any of these AI tools are to be used independently. I know that's one of those Jetson things that we're trying to get to, but for today, based on where we're starting from, we definitely need that human agent to work alongside these tools. And so in order to face those challenges, we need to make a conscious decision that we're going to utilize these tools and understand where they are today. We didn't, if we weren't able to clean up our data prior, now is a good time for companies to start doing that, and ensuring that if not, the AI is going to tell you, your data, it's going to show you basically a mirror to what your data is saying in your organization. And then it's going to add a few stories on top of that. But I really feel like this issue is a continuation of what's been going on with as we've been trying to do transformations as the technology has grown.
That's the biggest challenge that I've seen. I'm in IT, and people will read the headlines about AI and they won't do the research. So I hear things every day like, well, can you throw some AI at it? No, nope, can't do that. And it's the same, like what we preach all the time is you have to do the work up front. This is not a magic wand. And to your point, it will behave according to how you train it. And if you don't train it with good process and good data and good outcomes, it's going to be like a toddler who you feed sugar to all day long. It's going to go crazy. So like we're trying to balance the hype cycle with actual education, and it's challenging.
Just to follow up on what Mike was saying there, training the humans who are using the AI is just as important as training the AI with all of those processes and guardrails and et cetera. I mean, just in some of the internal work that we've done and also some recent external work, like there's a huge difference in how people are using, just for example, the language learning models, where maybe one person will ask one question, get the initial response and say, yeah, that's pretty generic. Maybe I'll use some, maybe I won't. Whereas the person sitting next to them may ask 20 questions and dig deeper and deeper and more customized and more context and more refined answers until it's like, holy moly, I have to copy and save that somewhere because this is really good stuff and I need to start implementing it. So, but within that, what process are we using? What prompt templates are we going through the process of cultivating for certain needs? Is that standardized across the department? Are they all using the same type of prompt with the same process to get a similar output to minimize hallucinations? Or are we just going with the first question and the first answer and saying, it's not really good enough yet. I'll just wait till it's better. So training the humans is just as important as training the AI at this stage.
So I am maybe in a nuanced position because I use artificial intelligence both for creative endeavors as well as for professional endeavors, all of it commercial. So I don't use AI primarily for information gathering. I model my ideas. So I have a complete analog to digital process. It starts with a little notebook. It turns into ideas that I craft and source and then put into prompts. And then I use artificial intelligence to help me like interview me, help me prioritize these things, help me put it into a format with guardrails in place. And I want to use AI as effectively as I possibly can to extend my brain to work in a way that it doesn't naturally work. And my concern with it is security and ethics. So as an artist, I don't want to steal anyone's art directly. I don't want to ethically misuse the technology. And I don't want to do anything to someone's work that I wouldn't want them doing to my own, right? In a commercial space in enterprise software, the unspoken subtext is that every AI project is a data project. Tanya said it very well there. Big companies are being forced to fix the data projects that they've been putting off for 30 years. And it's going to be expensive and it's going to be too slow because it's not already done. There's an opportunity cost being impacted every single day that companies are not using AI to forward the kinetic motion of their business.
Fascinating stuff. So I wanted to open it up to anyone who has follow-up questions on all of that. Any other thoughts? Moon, I see you grinning.
Hi. No, hello everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Yeah, the question I have, and this is, some great statements that I've heard so far. I think for me, there's a question around the generational aspect of this. So, in working with all these organizations that you're all working with, I mean, are you seeing certainly from a generational breakdown in terms of are Gen Z's better at this, or is Gen A, what are you seeing in terms of that generational gap as you're going into these organizations?
I think, look, I listed all the benefits that Generation X has earlier. The biggest drawback, I think, is our executive class in our generation. These are people who have been trained to work in siloed conversations, backroom hallways, spreadsheets. Their emails are private emails. They're not working out loud in front of other people. And I explained this to an executive recently when I showed them an operations channel and they had 7 different people in there solving problems, all of it connected into the CRM data and running everything that we needed to run. And I said, "Where are you at in this?" And their response was kind of dumbfounded. I'm like, you realize that if you're not an input into this value stream, you also won't be in the output when an AI analysis tool looks at that and says, how many people were involved in this? How many resources? What was the out value? And why are we paying this person over here so much money to send emails and squeeze spreadsheet cells? We don't need that anymore. We have bots that could do that faster. So like our executive class really needs to either step up or get out of the way for the younger generation. It's my concern every single day.
We called that in a conference with a group of neuroscientists, rewire or retire.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Jason, I think you had a comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some generational differences for sure, as JB was just talking about, but I think curiosity versus lack of curiosity is probably the biggest factor in terms of being an like a hyper proficient early adopter of AI or not. From what we've seen in our experiences at Five to Flow, some of the calls we've been on, and some of the different, I mean, we've had 20 somethings and 30 somethings that have never even logged into ChatGPT and used it whatsoever. Like Grammarly is the most AI driven tool that they've used. And we're like teaching them some basic stuff versus people in their 60s, 70s that are using it every day. Not that that's the norm, but it's driven by curiosity. It's driven by wanting to explore. And I have my side business. I coach some teenagers in fitness and nutrition, and they're asking me questions every day that they could be plugging in ChatGPT, and they just don't even know that it's there for them to use. And so, I think once people learn how to tap into curiosity and direct it, not always into AI, but like JB was talking about, having a process where I explore within myself, and then I kind of have AI help me organize those thoughts and offload some of the cognitive load onto the AI to help generate some more refinements. I think it's the curiosity versus the generational divide. I don't think there's anything age related that prohibits people from being able to use this optimally, but I think just maybe having the habits that have driven curiosity out of the norm are going to be more prevalent in the older generation, less in the younger, but it's just not it's not black and white, I don't think.
Yeah, I'd love to add on to that, having a 14-year-old and the experience that she's having in the school system, because we very much nurture curiosity in our household. In fact, one of our pieces that we do is we talk about moving from a state of I feel concerned to saying I feel curious about this. So trying to remove from the negative state to the positive. And that's something I try really hard to nurture in my daughter. And at school, they are pretty much banning the use of AI. And everywhere they turn, Grammarly is bad. You need to learn how to do it independently. And she wanted to make a study guide. Her teacher didn't make a study guide. And I said, well, let's go to ChatGPT and make yourself a study guide. And she thought, what if somebody finds out? And I said, that'll be great. Because the teacher should be helping you make these study guides. So I think it's going to be really fascinating to see what happens with this alpha generation and what they decide to do independently of the rules that are being established within the school system, because the school systems, at least within the public school systems, do not appear to be catching up. I think, Christy, you had something to add to that.
I was headed down the same path with my 14-year-old daughter, the same, and even college age nieces and nephews, they are being advised not to use GPT, not any type of AI to help them. And that coupled with the learn to pass a test methodology. So I think a lot of it is really incumbent upon us, whether it's our generation, Gen Z, et cetera, that we're teaching that curiosity, giving permission, showing them how to do that, but also provided the guardrails that I think JB was mentioning earlier, not just send them like, okay, what is the color of the sky, but why are you asking about the color of the sky? What makes it up? And really be that I guess, mentor when it comes to all things AI. There's a huge opportunity here.
Yeah, it was interesting.
One of the things that I've noticed about our generation, and I have to guard against this myself, certainly with my peers, is like Gen X, at the risk of stereotyping, we're cynical by nature because of how we grew up and when we grew up. And so guarding against like, meh, it's just another fad. It'll come and go. We've seen all these things come and go. Like I thought that originally until I really started to educate myself and live with it and realize that this one is actually different. So I find myself with my peer group having to say that all the time, that like if you're waiting for this one to blow over, it's going to blow you over, and we have to figure out how to deal with it.
That might be a quote for the session. Tom, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, a couple of different things. So there was a study done on knowledge workers that found that 20% of people were using AI at work, but not disclosing it to their team or manager. It was kind of like they didn't want their team or they feared that if they found out they're using AI, it would be seen as a negative. And 55% were using AI a couple of times a week. But 74% of those people don't even share or encourage others to use AI. So people are using it as this sneaky thing that helps them, but they don't want to disclose it because they think they're going to be replaced by AI because they identify that they're using it. And then you saw what the CEO of Shopify did and said, basically, you have to use AI. It wasn't, we need leaders to embrace it, champion it, right? He said, it's going to be part of your performance appraisal. We're going to use it. Imagine that every single person in the company is using it and there's AI agents next to you, and show your value and don't add folks to your team if you don't need to. So, he was taking it as like, it's here, it's there, it's already, so you have to embrace it.
Thank you.
I wanted to throw to Tim and Tonya, and I had a fascinating conversation in a prep call about education, and I'll tie education also with leadership and thinking about it not being a threat to teaching or a threat to leadership, but an enhancement to it. So curious, Tim and Tonya, your thoughts on that, and then I have some more questions, and we're going to be running out of time.
Yeah, so I am, I'm part of a couple of organizations with the schools here, where I am, and I've been hearing the same things, right? If you use AI, it's cheating. And it's very concerning to me because I feel like we're not actually going to help our kids understand how to use it well. I think, we had to do the same thing when it came to the internet and computer usage. We had to provide them guardrails of how to use these technologies well. I also have my opinion personally is that our teaching and the way we teach hasn't changed for over 20, 30, 50 years. And this is going to really push us into changing how that is done. particularly in, you know, making sure that we are getting our kids to think outside the box a little bit more, you know, and getting them to think about how to now use this technology to better to solve problems, solve some of those age-old problems that we've been trying to grapple with. And I'm just looking forward to how that's being done in my school system. They're excited that they're finally going to let the teachers have AI in the schools. And I'm telling all the teachers, here's an app, try this app out. You don't need to put anything security wise into it for you to get a lesson plan, for you to, you know, get more. One teacher I know is a history teacher, and what she does is she create worlds. You can go back in time and ask about the civil rights era. You can talk to and ask questions of it. And so now the kids are engaged and they're, you know, really wanting to, you know, get that information instead of just lecturing to them about what happened during that time. And so I am really optimistic and excited about how we will be able to change the way that we teach our kids instead of teaching them to pass the test. We hopefully will get um, more more of them will grow up to have more of a curiosity in trying to solve those big problems that we've been trying to solve. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of my things I try not to get too excited about because it's really a thorn in my side right now.
Well, I think it's an interesting one of like you mentioned the word, helping them think. And it's like when I was a teacher in 1999, I was meant to just teach them the answer. So, Tim, I know you and I had that chat as well. Thoughts from you on education before we close out
Yeah,
for this session?
I'm a visiting teacher in Pratt University and Institute and Rutgers University teaching prompt engineering. And I have to say, the biggest threat that AI is to teachers. Teachers have a tendency to want to keep things exactly the same. And if they don't change, and I'm not talking about all the teachers, but I'm talking about, unfortunately, the majority of teachers, leave things as they are. Tell kids it's bad to use AI. Try to make them write an essay, which kids have already figured out how to write an essay that you'll never know that they're using AI with already. They're already past that point. Plus, at the same time, we then see the statistics and find out we're number 37 in industrialized nations as far as test scores from kids getting out of high school. We are terrible at this, yet we spend more per student as a government than anybody else does. I don't even want to be political, sorry. But man, this could be the chance. This could be the opportunity where we transform these kids into suddenly being nothing but little test takers to suddenly becoming researchers, where they design and find out their passion and how to follow their passion on better learning. We have an opportunity at doing this, but I'm telling you, our school systems are so slow at changing. It's terrible. But anyway, don't get me started on that either. We'll never get done.
I
I
think we
love
have a
it.
whole
And
nother session on that topic, Kate, next
yeah,
session.
we do. We do. So I know I blocked this out for an hour and a half just so you guys got a half hour break before the next call because I knew our cognitive load would be super high. I want to close out in 3 minutes with a raising of hands of definitely want to see this as a series because we got to 2 questions out of the 10 that I have. Awesome. So we'll definitely book a recurring series of this, invite you as panelists, roundtable participants as you can. I am incredibly grateful to have heard all of your thoughts. I'm looking forward to the ones where we get a little sparring going on some conflicting views, but want to just end kind of around the table on key takeaways from today. Muna, we'll start with you since you're not on mute.
For me, yeah, so I was a few minutes late, but really loved the call. Just grateful for you, Kate, and Jason, and the team out there for creating this space. And yeah, love the whole idea of more education around AI. And I love Alexis' viewpoint on curiosity at home, because actually that's where it has to start. To your point, JB, and Tim, for us to make any changes, start at home.
JB, closing thoughts from you?
Gratitude and hope for the future. I think that, while we live in an age of massive disruption in the institutions that we have relied on for many, many years, there are also opportunities here to apply this technology in a safe, ethical, and effective manner that will fill in gaps that, frankly, the human heart has not been able to figure out yet. But that being said, the one thing that this technology, which is not thinking, it is a probabilistic word calculator, and it's only as good as the information it's grounded on it. That's been said several times today. The one thing AI will not currently be able to reproduce is human emotional intelligence. We are all responsible for showing up every day with that in our behaviors and in our use of this technology with one another. So I am super hopeful for the future, and I'm very grateful to be part of this brilliant group of people. Thank you so much.
Love it. Tonya, thoughts from you? Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, when I got my foot wet into AI, I saw the potential immediately for helping to close the wealth gap as one of the things. It's not going to be the cure all. It's just one of the tools to help close the wealth gap. It really lowers the barrier to entry. So I am really excited to see and how this will evolve over time and to continue these conversations about educating at every level about AI and its usage. And, I'm just really excited, and I'm excited really to continue the conversation with everyone. It's been really great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tom?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited personally and how I can use it personally in helping people and companies leverage AI. I agree. I mean, I think the World Economic Forum said 92 million jobs will be removed, but it's going to create 170 million jobs. So it's that rewiring, it's that transition. It's how we transition to take advantage of AI. It is going to be bigger than the internet. It's going to be bigger than cloud computing. It's going to be bigger than mobility. It's going to be amazing. There's a lot of things we have to worry about and care for, but I'm really excited about it.
Tim?
I think we need to know there's no such things as absolutes. And the problem is if we continue sometimes to drink our own bathwater, we never get any new insights. So it's important to talk to new people all the time. And sometimes I talk to people that are very far down the spectrum that use it like every day and every hour. In fact, they're probably using it too much. And then I talk to people who just don't use it at all, right? And then there's that other group that thinks we're all going to die very soon next month. It's all good to talk to everybody.
Yeah, we're at the 1999 millennium.
Yes.
Irvin?
I think this is different than say when blockchain was a big thing, say when metaverse is a big thing. This is here to stay. It's in everyone's living room. It's made the frontline news. And so I go back to a quote, Kate, that you said that I liked. I wrote it down, and it's either get rewired or retire. But yeah, this has been a great conversation, and excited to be a part of the Go Forward.
I love it. I want to open it up to attendees. Jennifer, Muna, Val, Karen, Elena. Any thoughts from anyone? Jennifer?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I love the conversation. Thank you so much. I thought it was really interesting and just intriguing to think about the comparisons of the technology we thought way back when was, so incredibly unique and exciting and different to comparing it to AI now and the things that we're about to experience. So I haven't thought about it in that sort of juxtaposition before. So I appreciated that. Thank you.
Elena?
Oh, this has been awesome. And I think personally, it's good to be in a room with others who are at the same, stage going through this. So that's awesome. And I've completely embraced AI. I used to have an agency with 18 people on the team, and being able to reset my consultancy now, it's a whole new ball game. So I'm in a really fortunate position in which I can dive completely into it, and I'm able to bring my clients a whole elevated level of service that I never could before. So I'm just, over the moon with it. It doesn't scare me at all. And yeah, if anybody ever needs a pep talk on what if anyone suffered like freaking out in your world, you could send them to me to network. I'm happy to help. But it sounds like we've all got it well in hand. So I love the retire. What is it? Rewire, retire. That's perfect. So
yeah, we'll share that recording after. Anyone else?
I
Well,
have,
that should be the subtitle of this. Great
yes, I was thinking about
Rewire,
that.
Retire. That's the series name.
Yes. Um, I think it was JB that you started at the front of the conversation with framing it that our generation has gone through the most technological change of any generation. And I think when I'm speaking to my peers and colleagues about, bringing them along, I'm going to reinforce that. Like, we've already been here, we've already done this. The change may feel fast right now, but it doesn't mean it's not possible for us. Look what we've already done. So it was really helpful to me, Kate, having it framed up front about, think about the big milestone of change that you experienced 30 years ago. It's like, wow, consistent over time. And we've always stepped up and adapted. And we can continue to do so now.
Yeah, the analogy I always give on this from a physical experience perspective is downhill skiing. And when I'm doing a black diamond and I get down something absolutely atrocious and I'm like looking at the next downhill and I'm like, oh my God, that looks terrifying. And then I'm like, wait, turn around and look up at what you just did. So I think we sometimes forget to think how agile and change accepting we are and how daring. I know, Muna, you're a skier, so you can relate.
You just stole my thunder. And I was actually going to suggest, I think for me, this is I've always said to friends and anyone who's bothered to listen, think like a child. Children never give up, and they're not. There's no fear with kids. They fall over loads of times and still get up and try again, and kind of approaching this. As adults, we are just confronted by fear in all sorts of manners, ways, shapes, or form. Children just don't have that fear, and it's like the open universe for us to try new things, be creative in a slightly different way, and who knows, we might actually make the world a better place.
I have one lingering thought on and it kind of connects to what we've all been talking about, but on the AI is cheating and the education piece that we were talking about earlier. And something that I often say to people to kind of help them wrap their heads around how AI is going to change, not just how we do things, but how we need to learn to think, right? We need to learn to think differently with AI, because any question on an SAT, which Tom just referred into in the chat, any question on an SAT that AI can answer better and faster than you is probably not the type of intellect that we should be continuing to develop. We need to develop a complementary skill set at this point. So that's going to shift huge things in how we educate ourselves and how to think, from linear progression models to more creative and agile models, because we want to train adaptability into people, right? Because we're talking about how fast everything's going to change, but we haven't learned how to adapt with our school system. Everything is rigid and linear and textbook and the same, but we need to learn adaptability and customized paths and all that stuff. So, it's not just that there's this tool that we can use, but we need to learn something different. And we wrote a whole playbook on this actually recently.
Yeah.
One of the tips in there was, it's not about knowledge anymore, it's about questions, because the knowledge is not quite there, but essentially, philosophically, the knowledge is democratized. It's out there. You can access it if you can ask the right questions. So now it's not necessarily, do I know everything I need to know, but can I find it by having a process of questions that I can ask cleverly and with curiosity to get to what I need to find out. It's a totally different type of skill set than I need to learn and memorize everything, because nothing's going to be able to learn and memorize things better than AI, not the human brain anyway.
Well, as proven, we know we could talk about this for days. So I think we'll kick off our next session on curiosity and critical thinking and questions. So thank you all so much for bringing amazing thoughts, stories, thinking about this as an evolution, not a revolution. That's an old Blue Wolf line. Thank you all so much. I'm super grateful for your thoughts, input, feedback, everything, all that you're doing. And we'll see you again on the next one of this series. Take care, everybody.